Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Hypno Lion's Roar. And I am Wayne Walker, the carnivore hypnotist. I am your host today, as I am every day when I do this. Uh, so I was thinking a few days ago about a subject that came up with one of my clients, and really a lot of my clients. And the rule is, and the subject matter is this: it's rules. Now, when people hear the word rules, some people kind of get, I don't know, wigged out, go sideways, reject them because they feel like some people, not all, some people feel like they don't want rules. But we all have rules. I have rules, you have rules. And a lot of times these rules are exist and you don't even know what they are. And they run your life. But if you don't know what your rules are, how can you live your life effectively and without stress? Because so many times you have rules for yourself, and because you don't understand them or don't recognize them or don't know them, then you could be fighting against yourself and you don't even know why. Now, what are these rules? Well, rules for how you're going to be treated, rules for how you're going to interact with other people, rules for how you want to live, rules for working, rules for how you raise your kids. But most people don't even understand those rules. They don't know those rules, and they operate based on past experiences, but they want different outcomes, and they end up fighting themselves as a result of that. For example, if you're in a relationship, and this is something that I work with all the time with people on relationship issues, is that you need to know what your do-dos and your don't-dos are, the rules for the relationship. And every couple, friend, family member has these rules between themselves. And again, they don't usually know them. And as a result, it can cause issues in the relationship. And you don't even know why, because you didn't know the rules and they didn't know your rules. So let's just stay on the relationship issue for just a moment. If you have a relationship with your wife, your girlfriend, significant other, whatever you want to classify them as, you have your do-dos and your don't-dos. Your do-dos are what you want from the other person in the relationship. The don't-dos are what you don't want from that other person in the relationship. Now, if the other person has their rules, the do-dos and the don't-dos, and you don't know them, then you're going to butt heads many times because you don't understand the rules. It's really simple. Understand what your do-dos are and understand what your don't-dos are. And you share those, and then it becomes an issue of acceptance or negotiation, or they're deal breakers. But a lot of times we get invested with relationships and we don't realize that maybe some of their rules are deal breakers for us, for you, for me. So you have to understand these rules in order to move that relationship forward. And this goes back to your work, goes back to your friends, everything. Because if you really sit down and look at it and say, okay, what are my rules for a friend? What do I want from them? What is it I don't want from them? because a lot of the falling out that friends have between each other is they didn't understand the rules. So if you don't know the rules, you don't understand the rules, then how can you hold somebody accountable for something that they did or they said? And if that's what you're doing, are you willing to lose that friendship as a result of that? How important is the relationship to you? Excuse me. So it comes down to, which is what everything comes down to, is how important is this or this person important or to you in your life? Hopefully, if you're married or if you're in a committed relationship, that person is very important. But let's take again the relationship issue. Let's just go there because it's easy to talk about, easy to get an example. So let's say that there is one of the people in the relationship has a friend from way back. That friend could be just a friend of the family. It could be a past boyfriend or girlfriend, past best friend, whatever that person represents in the past. But let's say that person is involved with your core people of your relationship, their friend. If that friend is causing issues within your relationship, any issue that is having an effect on your relationship with your boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, whatever, then you have a decision to make. And that decision is whether to move that person out of your sphere of influence so it doesn't affect your relationship in a negative way. Because if it's important, if the relationship is important to you, then that's what you do. However, if the other person, the significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, is wanting to try to insulate you from your friends for selfish reasons or family members, then that's a different issue, and that could be a deal breaker for you, or it should be. So this is the importance of rules, because you can't just blanketly apply everything or just one focus or one idea, if you will, to friends, and that there's some things that go on and nothing happens in a vacuum. So you have to determine that whether that's a deal breaker or whether that's something that, that's valid. If the person, let's say the person sends you a text on your phone and makes a comment of whatever, it could be of a sexual nature of this, but if you can't share that with your partner, then it's probably an inappropriate communication. Because if you're in a relationship, then whatever text that you're being sent, you should be able to share that with your partner. And look, there's conditions on that as well. Maybe it's of a private nature, it's this, but you'll know. And if that affects the person that you're with and you care about that person, then again, you have a decision to make. And this goes across the board. If you're buying, let's say that you've decided to make a major purchase. And the rule in my household is real simple. My wife and I is we both have to agree on the purchase in order to move forward. Period. I mean, we'll talk about it, but we both have to agree with it. And that's the way things are, because that's what you do in a relationship. You talk, you agree, and what's good for the both. Okay, both in the relationship. A few years ago, my wife and I were in our breezeway, and we were talking, and I had mentioned to her about an acronym, WIIFM, WIFM, and it stands for what's in it for me. And I had used that expression for years and years and years. Even when I was managing people, I was a general manager of a company, and then of an office, and then sales manager, and that. So, but it's a WIFM. And if you discover what a person's WIFM is, you can better relate to them. You can better communicate with them. You can better understand them. My wife didn't see the logic in that. She didn't like it. She didn't like the sound of it. And the sound was, what's in it for me? And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's the way things are. Well, a few days later, we were back in the breezeway. We were having conversation just at the end of the day. And she looks at me, she goes, I've been thinking. And anytime my wife says, I've been thinking, it's going to be entertaining at best and irritating at the least. So, and I'm sure those of you who are listening to this or watching this will understand that. But she said that that whole thing about the whole WIFM thing that she didn't like and blah, blah, blah. And she says, I've been thinking. I said, okay, well, entertain me. And she goes, I think it should be WIIFU. And I said, okay, well, I heard the last two letters FU, and it's like, well, that doesn't sound like it's going to be a positive thing. She goes, no. She goes, instead of what's in it for me, it's what's in it for us. And I said, well, you know what? And I stopped and I said, you know what? I like that. So I have adopted that. I give full credit to my wife for that. But I have adopted that, and it looks in the relationship, the two of us, of what's in it for us. Now you can apply that to your friendships. You can apply it to family members, and you can apply it to, I guess you can apply it to your dog if you want. But the focus is on what's in it for us. And it forces you to look at things from different perspectives, to consider things from different perspectives, from and making decisions. Now, you may not like the decision that you need to make, or being forced in that position. If you feel like you're being forced, then there's probably a problem in the relationship, which is unfortunate, because I find most people who have issue with rules, they want rules to apply to other people, but they don't want rules to apply to themselves. And they don't like to live by those rules. For example, if I'm working with, whether it be a man or a woman, if I'm working with them and I ask them, and one of the exercises that I do, depending on the situation, of course, is I ask them, I said, what is your definition of what a man is, or what a woman is? And many times they'll look at me with a confused look and says, well, a man's a man, a woman's a woman. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, what is your definition of a man or a woman? How do you see that a man is? How do they act? How do they live? What are their responsibilities? Everything associated with being a man. How are you supposed to be in a relationship? You're in a relationship, and how do you present yourself? How do you operate within that relationship? And the same thing goes for women do the same exercise. Now, here's where I separate the wheat from the chaff. If I ask a man that, and ask him to give me that definition and give me those parameters, and I may ask him, look, write them down and bring them back in the next time that we get together, or email them to me. If I don't get them, if I have to remind them and they keep putting it off, then that tells me something. And what does it tell me? It tells me that they don't want to paint themselves into a picture, because whatever they are going to present to you, one, it may cause you to like, how do you come up with that? Or they're going to tell you what you want to hear, but it's going to be a conflict. They don't want to do it because they know they're not going to be able to adhere to it. And they don't want to be judged by it at a later date. So it's a very telling question. You see, and people will come to you and they'll say, well, you can't just put that across the board. It's, things are not black and white. And I will submit to you that things are absolutely black and white. Now, you may have to go through some education. You may have to go through some research. You may have to go through understanding in order for it to get to black and white. But it will be ultimately black and white issue. And I've had people argue with me that, well, you can't, that's not black and white. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And they're really steadfast in their argument about that. And I'll let them go on. And then when I've about heard enough, I'll make the statement of, you know what? It seems like you're very steadfast in that position, kind of very black and white about it. And usually I'm met with silence or yeah, buts. Yeah, but this and yeah, but that. And oh, well. And see, the black and white is this. You have black and you have white. They come together. That little spot, that line where the two come together, that's your gray area. That area is for education, for understanding, investigating. But once you get that out of the way, you're going to fall on one side or the other. You're going to be black or white. Now, there may be considerations of this. If this, then that. Okay. But it will be black and white. So these rules that we all have, if you want to improve your life, if you want to improve your relationships, then you'll take the time to understand what those rules are for yourself and then for your partner. And the exercise that I do with people is I'll have the person write down their do-dos and their don't-dos on a piece of paper, and the other person will do the same exact thing. And then at the time of my choosing, I have them switch papers. And then we go over them point by point. And usually what will come out of it is, I had no idea that this was a do-do for you. And they would say, well, I told you this, and I've always told you that, and blah, blah, in one ear and out the other. But once you put it on paper and commit it to paper, you can jump up and down and holler all you want, but that writing on that paper is not going to change. It is what it is, and that's your position. You'll also discover a lot of stuff about the other person that, again, may cause you pause and ultimately may be a deal breaker. All those things have to be considered. If You want a long time, conducive, understanding, and loving relationship. And I'm assuming that everybody who's watching this wants that. Some don't. Some don't. Some just want to use people and, for what they can get out of them or that. And not that they're doing it consciously, but that's just subconsciously. That's their operation, or the MO, modus operandi, if you will. I've had people that have told me that my relationships never go past 6 months because something always happens. Okay, that's going to be interesting. What are they setting up to end at 6 months? What is it? What are they afraid of? I mean, that falls into a category of you're getting into something completely different. But we all know people like that. We all know family members like that. So if you want to improve your relationships, if you want to improve and understand yourself, then do a list of do-dos and the don't-dos for your friends, for your partner. Look at it, and then ask questions of the other person that kind of gives you an idea of what their do-dos and their don't-dos are. If you want to have them write it down, then have them write it down. The other thing that we need to focus on are the words that we use. The words that we use and understanding the definitions of those words. I'll give you a real good example. Years ago, I was in a relationship, smart lady, college educated, and she would use words, but she would not apply the definition of those words appropriately. And therefore, I didn't understand what the hell she was saying. So I was always finding myself, what's your definition of that word? How am I supposed to take it? And she was always like, why do we always have to go through this? Well, the reason that she did that is because she wanted wiggle room in what she said. I learned this, or I discovered it, if you will, but later. But that turned out to be a big issue. Because if you're somewhat smart, if you're somewhat educated about the English language and words, then you're going to pick up on these things. If you don't understand a word, you say, hey, stop. I've never heard that word before. What word is that? It's easy nowadays just to get on your phone and find out what the definition of a word is. Expand your vocabulary, if you will. So the words that you use are important. How you use them are important. You have to be very careful with your words, because once you say a word, saying a word is like a bullet. Once you fire the bullet, you can't get it back after it's fired. Once you say something, you can't bring it in. You can't bring it back. So those things need to be looked at and understood. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something, enjoyed it. Please follow me. Hit the subscribe button on my channel here, so you'll get new content that I'm putting out weekly. If you have requests, if you have questions, please feel free to get back with me on that. I would enjoy conversing with you. And if you need help in any area, check out the website. The website right here down at the bottom. Explore, see what the benefits could be. All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye.